Imagine a civilization so powerful, its armies rivaled ancient Egypt, so skilled in metalwork, their weapons were legendary, yet one day they vanished, swallowed by time, leaving behind only whispers and enigmatic relics. This is the story of the Hittites, masters of Anatolia, whose empire once stretched across the ancient world, only to fade into obscurity for centuries. But their artifacts refused to stay silent. Hidden beneath layers of earth and myth, these objects began to speak, revealing secrets that would force historians to rewrite entire chapters of the past. From intricately carved seals to towering stone monuments, each artifact is a puzzle piece, waiting to be fitted into the grand mosaic of human history. The Hittites didn't just leave behind tools or trinkets, they left behind clues. Clues that hint at a society with astonishing advancements in metallurgy, governance, and even diplomacy. Their bronze smiths forged blades stronger than any of their time. Their scribes penned treaties that still influence modern diplomacy, and their temples housed deities whose names echo through millennia. Yet for all their achievements, they were nearly erased from memory until these very objects began to resurface one by one, pulling their story back from oblivion. Today, we're embarking on a journey through 25 of the most mysterious Hittite artifacts ever discovered, each one a key that unlocks a door to the past. Some will challenge what we thought we knew about ancient technology. Others will rewrite the political maps of the Bronze Age, and a few, they might just hold answers to questions we haven't even thought to ask yet. This isn't just a list, it's a detective story, a treasure hunt spanning thousands of years. So let's dig in piece by piece and uncover the legacy of a civilization that refused to be forgotten. Standing guard at the ancient capital of Hattusa, the Lion Gate isn't just a doorway, it's a statement. Carved from massive stone blocks, two roaring lions flank the entrance, their eyes locked in a perpetual stare, as if warning enemies that this city was untouchable. For centuries, scholars debated whether Hattusa was real or just a legend whispered in old texts until this very gate emerged from the earth, silent but undeniable proof that the Hittite capital wasn't just a myth. It was a thriving, fortified metropolis. The lions themselves are masterpieces of symbolism. Unlike later cultures that used these creatures purely for decoration, the Hittites imbued them with meaning. Their mouths open mid-roar, they weren't just decoration, they were protectors. In Hittite belief, lions warded off evil spirits, and placing them at the main entrance turned the gate into more than just a physical barrier. It was a spiritual one too, and their craftsmanship unmatched for their time. The precision of the carving shows a society that didn't just build, they engineered with intention. But the real genius lies in the gate's defensive design. The walls curve inward, forcing attackers into a bottleneck where they'd be vulnerable from above. The Hittites didn't rely on brute strength alone, they used psychology. Approaching those lions, hearing the echoes of footsteps in the narrow passage, it was meant to unsettle. And it worked. This innovation didn't just defend Hattusa, it influenced cities across the Near East. Centuries later, Assyrian and Babylonian architects borrowed this very layout, proving the Hittites weren't just warriors. They were pioneers. What's haunting is how close we came to never knowing this. Had the Lion Gate remained buried, we might still be calling Hattusa a legend. Instead, its stones speak, telling us that empires aren't just built on battles, they're built on brilliance. And this gate, it's the first clue in a trail of mysteries left behind by a civilization far ahead of its time. Hidden in the rolling hills of central Anatolia, the Yazılıkaya Rock Sanctuary feels less like a ruin and more like a divine gathering frozen in stone. Step into this open-air temple, and you're surrounded by a silent parade of gods and goddesses, 63 figures carved into the living rock, their procession winding through natural chambers as if the earth itself had opened to welcome them. This wasn't just a place of worship, it was a cosmic map, a sacred ledger of the Hittite pantheon, where every chisel stroke revealed how they saw the universe. The most striking figure, a towering deity gripping a sword so meticulously detailed, you can almost hear the clang of bronze. Scholars call him the sword god, but his identity runs deeper. He's not just a warrior, he's a stormbringer, a destroyer, and a protector rolled into one. His blade isn't merely a weapon, it's a symbol of divine authority, cutting through chaos to impose order. What's fascinating is how this imagery echoes across cultures. Centuries later, you'll spot similar sword-wielding gods in Greek and Near Eastern myths. The Hittites didn't just influence politics and trade. Their religious iconography seeped into the bedrock of later civilizations, but the real revelation lies in the hieroglyphs snaking around these carvings. Unlike the cuneiform of their bureaucratic records, these symbols were reserved for the sacred, a script as monumental as the gods it described. They named deities like Teshub, the storm god whose thunder rivaled Zeus, and sun goddess of Arena, a maternal figure as powerful as Egypt's Isis. Before Yazılıkaya was unearthed, historians argued over whether the Hittites even had a structured pantheon. These walls silence the debate. Here, gods stand in precise ranks, whether deities, underworld rulers, even a mysterious 12 gods group that hints at ritual calendars or astral worship. What's haunting is how the sanctuary mirrors the Hittites' own landscape. The rock face isn't flat, it swells and recedes like a stormy sky, making the deities seem to emerge from the very elements they control. And at the heart of it all, a hidden niche, likely where the king performed rites bridging the human and divine. This wasn't art for art's sake, it was a spiritual technology, a way to harness the sacred. Yazılıkaya's greatest lesson might be this: the Hittites didn't just fear their gods, they conversed with them, carving their voices into stone so future generations like ours might overhear. Every figure here is a whisper across 3,000 years, proving that their faith wasn't just ritual. It was a living, breathing dialogue with the cosmos. Buried in the ruins of Hattusa, a clay tablet no larger than a modern tablet computer shattered centuries of assumptions about the ancient world. The bronze treaty between Hattusili III and Ramses II wasn't just a ceasefire, it was a blueprint for peace that would outlast both empires. Imagine two superpowers locked in decades of war, finally sitting down not to demand surrender but to negotiate terms as equals. That's what makes this artifact revolutionary. Most conquerors of the Bronze Age documented their victories on towering obelisks. This treaty was inscribed in duplicate, one copy for Egypt, one for the Hittites, written in Akkadian, the diplomatic language of the era, proving both sides acknowledged mutual respect. The clauses read like a modern peace accord. Prisoners of war weren't to be executed or enslaved. They'd be sent home to their own houses. Borders were fixed with sworn oaths to defend them. But the most extraordinary detail, a mutual defense pact. If either kingdom faced rebellion or invasion, the other would send troops. This wasn't just ending a war, it was building a system of collective security 3,000 years before the United Nations. Historians once thought such complex diplomacy emerged much later. This tablet forced them to reconsider the sophistication of Bronze Age statecraft. What's equally fascinating are the personal touches. The text refers to Ramses as brother, a term reserved for equals in Hittite court language. Hattusili even married his daughter to the pharaoh, weaving family ties into the political fabric. Modern diplomats call this confidence-building, small gestures that prevent future conflict. The Hittites weren't just warriors, they understood the psychology of peace. The treaty's survival is a marvel. The Egyptian version was carved on temple walls at Karnak, but the Hittite copy, pressed into this humble clay tablet, was preserved by the very fire that destroyed Hattusa. The heat baked it solid, ensuring its message endured. Today, a replica hangs at United Nations headquarters, a testament to humanity's oldest known attempt to replace swords with words. This artifact doesn't just document history, it suggests the Hittites were centuries ahead in realizing that true power isn't just winning wars but preventing them. Barely the size of a thumb, the king's seal of Suppiluliuma I held more power than most swords. Pressed into clay tablets sent across empires, this tiny cylinder wasn't just a royal signature, it was a visual manifesto, blending Hittite and Hurrian artistry to broadcast a king's ambition. Discovered in Egypt's Amarna archives amidst letters to pharaohs, its very presence there was a clue. Suppiluliuma wasn't just ruling his people, he was negotiating on the world stage. The seal's craftsmanship reveals a deliberate fusion of cultures. On one side, storm gods raise thunderbolts in classic Hittite style, muscles coiled like springs. On the other, winged deities hover with the delicate curves of Hurrian tradition, a nod to Suppiluliuma's marriage to a Hurrian princess, a political alliance carved in stone. Historians call this diplomacy in miniature. By merging artistic styles, the king signaled that his realm wasn't just a conquering force. It was a melting pot where subject nations could see their own gods reflected in his authority. But the real intrigue lies in where these seals turned up. Cracked clay fragments bearing its impression were found in Amarna, Egypt, amid the famous Amarna letters, diplomatic correspondence between kings. One tablet addressed to Pharaoh Akhenaten warns of enemy movements near Syria, signed with this very seal. That small imprint authenticated the message like a Bronze Age wax seal, proving Suppiluliuma's network stretched further than anyone guessed. Before its discovery, scholars debated whether Hittite kings corresponded directly with Egypt. This stamp-sized artifact settled the debate. Even more telling is what's missing. Unlike boastful monuments, seals were functional, used daily by scribes and diplomats. The wear on this one's edges suggests it wasn't just ceremonial, it was a workhorse of statecraft rolled across countless documents. Every rotation etched its message deeper. Here was a king secure enough to share artistic credit with subject cultures, yet shrewd enough to brand every decree with unmistakable authority. Today, the seal whispers a lesson modern leaders might heed. Power isn't just about dominance, it's about recognition. By weaving Hurrian motifs into his royal insignia, Suppiluliuma didn't dilute his identity. He expanded it, turning adversaries into allies with every turn of a stone. Unearthed from the royal tombs of Alaca Höyük, the sun disk gleams with secrets cast in bronze. A radiant circle flanked by leaping stags and bull heads, their forms so fluid they seem to move under flickering torchlight. At first glance, it looks like a ceremonial standard, perhaps carried in processions, but peer closer, and you'll notice the precision of its celestial symmetry. The central disk doesn't just represent the sun. It's surrounded by smaller orbs arranged in patterns that mirror star clusters visible in Anatolia's night sky. This isn't mere decoration, it's a portable cosmos, a bronze snapshot of how the Hittites saw their place in the universe. The bull and stag motifs offer their own riddles. In Hittite symbolism, bulls embodied raw power storm gods often rode them, while stags were liminal creatures, guides between worlds. Their presence here suggests the disk wasn't just an object of worship, it was a bridge. A bridge between earth and sky, between the mortal realm and the divine. Some scholars argue the arrangement mirrors the Hittite pantheon's hierarchy, with the sun god at its apex, flanked by lesser deities. Others see a seasonal calendar, the animals representing solstice markers. What's undeniable is the mastery behind its casting. The disk's bronze is alloyed with exacting precision, its surface still untarnished after millennia, proof that Hittite metalworkers didn't just craft tools, they forged sacred geometry. Then there's the eerie coincidence of its discovery. The sun disk was found alongside ritual weapons and skeletal remains in a tomb, placed near the skull of a high-ranking figure. Was it a guide for the afterlife, a talisman to ward off darkness? The answer might lie in Hittite hymns where the sun god is invoked as the judge of mankind, his light exposing hidden truth. If so, the disk wasn't just reflecting sunlight, it was channeling divine judgment. Modern astronomers have even noted something startling. The disk's smaller orbs align with the Pleiades, a cluster critical to ancient agriculture. Timing planting seasons by these stars was common, but embedding that knowledge into ritual art, that's uniquely Hittite. It reveals a society where science and spirituality weren't at odds. They were threaded together, each informing the other. The sun disk's greatest marvel might be its duality. It's both a spiritual compass and a technological triumph, proving the Hittites didn't just observe the heavens. They sought to hold them in their hands, casting the infinite into bronze so they might carry the cosmos with them, even into the grave. The Inandık Vase doesn't just hold wine, it holds a symphony. Unearthed near modern-day Ankara, this pottery masterpiece stands nearly 3 feet tall, its surface alive with tiered reliefs that capture a Hittite festival in full swing. Each register tells a different story, like chapters in a sacred play. At the base, priests pour libations into towering vessels, their robes carved with such detail you can almost hear the liquid splashing. Above them, musicians pluck lyres and beat drums, their fingers frozen mid-strum, while dancers twist in spirals, their movements echoing rituals still performed in Anatolia today. This isn't just decoration, it's a liturgical roadmap revealing who stood where and why in the Hittite cosmic order. What sets this vase apart is its layered storytelling. The lowest tier shows temple attendants preparing offerings, humble work but vital. The middle band features high priests identifiable by their pointed hats overseeing the ceremony. At the summit, a king and queen, arms raised to the gods, flanked by divine symbols. This wasn't artistic choice, it was theological architecture. The vase's vertical layout mirrors the Hittite belief in a tiered universe: earthly servants below, mediators in the middle, rulers closest to the heavens. Before its discovery, scholars assumed Hittite rites were monolithic. The Inandık Vase proved their ceremonies were as choreographed as ballet. The musicians offer another clue. Their instruments, lyres, tambourines, and a peculiar horn called the Höyük match descriptions in Hittite hymns. One tablet from Hattusa mentions the sound that pleases the storm god, and here we see that sound made visual. The lyrist's tilted head suggests harmony, while the drummer's fierce strike hints at rhythms meant to mimic thunder. Even their positioning matters. Musicians face the libation pourers, proving music wasn't entertainment, it was prayer, an essential thread in the ritual tapestry. Then there's the wine itself. Chemical residue inside the vase revealed traces of honey and herbs, likely a sacred brew. The reliefs show it being poured not into cups but onto the ground, a direct offering to the earth. Modern ethnographers note parallels in Kurdish Zema ceremonies where libations still honor ancestors. The Hittites may have vanished, but their gestures linger, passed down like a whispered recipe. But the vase's real genius is its portability. Unlike temple carvings, this vessel could travel, bringing ritual authority to remote regions. Imagine it carried into a village, its scenes serving as both script and sermon, teaching distant communities how to perform their faith correctly. In that sense, the Inandık Vase wasn't just art. It was a missionary, a diplomat, and a time capsule all at once. Today, its reliefs challenge our assumptions about ancient worship. We often picture stone-faced priests chanting in monotone, but here, there's motion, music, even joy. The dancers' flowing skirts, the wine's arched streams, they capture a moment where the divine wasn't feared but celebrated. This vase reminds us that for the Hittites, religion wasn't just about power. It was about participation, a chorus of voices, human and godly, harmonizing under Anatolia's wide sky. Deep in the ruins of Suppiluliuma, a treasure trove of clay tablets lay waiting beneath the dust, 3,000 fragments of history. each one a whispered secret from the Hittite court. Unlike the formal treaties and royal decrees found elsewhere, these cuneiform records pulse with raw immediacy, capturing the daily chaos of a kingdom under siege not by armies but by disease and political storms. At the center of it all, Queen Pujuhepa, a woman whose name surfaces again and again, not as a passive consort but as a ruler in her own right, issuing commands, settling disputes, and even negotiating with foreign dignitaries. One tablet addressed to her begins with a line that shatters stereotypes. "To the sun, my lady," a title reserved for deities and kings. Here was a queen who didn't just advise, she governed. The tablets paint a picture of a court in crisis. A particularly chilling record details a plague sweeping through Hattusa, its symptoms described with eerie precision: fever, lesions, a swift descent into death. The timing aligns hauntingly with outbreaks in Egypt during Tutankhamun's reign, suggesting a Bronze Age pandemic stretching across empires. Hittite physicians scrambled to respond, their remedies recorded in frantic script. Charms invoking the plague god era, quarantines for infected households, even a directive to burn contaminated clothing. This wasn't just bureaucracy, it was triage. The tablets reveal how Pujuhepa spearheaded relief efforts, diverting grain stores to afflicted regions and ordering rituals at remote mountain shrines. Her leadership during this catastrophe proves she wasn't merely a figurehead. She was the empire's steady hand when the world seemed to unravel, but the cache's real bombshell lies in its personal letters. In one, Pujuhepa reprimands a provincial governor for ignoring her edicts, her tone sharp as a scribe's stylus. "Do you think because I am a woman, my words blow like empty wind?" Another shows her mediating a bitter succession dispute between her sons, her diplomacy deft as any king's. These weren't the quiet murmurings of a royal wife, they were the bold strokes of a co-ruler. Modern historians once dismissed Hittite queens as ceremonial. Shapanua's tablets forced a reckoning. Then there's the mystery of the missing prince. A fragmented letter alludes to a royal son sent to the land of Ahiowa, possibly Mycenaean Greece, as a hostage or diplomat. The phrasing is cryptic, but the implications are staggering. Were the Hittites forging alliances across the Aegean? The answer crumbled with the tablet's edge, leaving us with tantalizing silence. What makes this cache extraordinary isn't just its scale, but its intimacy. These tablets weren't meant for posterity. They were working documents smudged with finger marks and hurried corrections. In their cracks and grooves, we hear the Hittite court's heartbeat, the coughs of scribes, the rustle of papyrus, the low murmur of advisors debating as plague winds howled outside. This is history unvarnished, where queens wielded power, plagues reshaped dynasties, and a civilization's fate hinged on words pressed into wet clay. The Shapanua tablets do more than document events. They dissolve the barrier between past and present, letting us stand shoulder to shoulder with a queen who ruled, a people who feared, and a world both foreign and eerily familiar. In their lines, the Hittites cease to be relics, they become voices. Buried beneath the fortress walls of Carchemish, the gold dagger gleamed in the darkness for 3,000 years, not as a tool of war, but as a masterpiece of peace. Unearthed from the tomb of a local governor, its blade bears no nicks or scratches, its gold inlaid hilt untouched by time. This wasn't a weapon meant for battle. It was a diplomatic heirloom, a gift from the Hittite king to a trusted vassal, inscribed in Akkadian with a message that rewrites our understanding of imperial rule. By the storm god's will, you shall govern justly. The craftsmanship alone is staggering bronze so finely tempered it rivals steel, threaded with gold wire in patterns mimicking sacred rivers, but the real revelation lies in its context. Governors of Carchemish weren't just puppets, they were partners buried with riches that rivaled royal tombs. The dagger's inscriptions are a puzzle in two languages. Alongside the Akkadian pledge of legitimacy, tiny hieroglyphs spiral up the blade, listing the governor's achievements, canal repairs, temple dedications, even legal reforms. Normally, such boasts were reserved for kings. Here, they suggest a decentralized empire where local rulers wielded real authority. Archaeologists expected to find symbols of subjugation in vassal tombs, chains, or treaties. Instead, they found this golden paradox, a weapon that celebrated autonomy. Technically, the dagger is a marvel. The gold isn't merely glued on. It's woven into the bronze through a process called damascening, where grooves are etched with acid. Yes, the Hittites used corrosive chemistry, then filled with molten precious metal. X-rays reveal something even more startling. The blade's core isn't solid. It's a sandwich of bronze and iron, a hybrid design that granted flexibility without sacrificing sharpness. This wasn't just artistry, it was material science centuries ahead of its time. But the tomb itself tells the fuller story. Alongside the dagger lay Mycenaean pottery, Egyptian scarabs, and lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. Carchemish wasn't a backwater, it was a crossroads enriching both itself and the empire it served. The Hittites didn't drain their vassals dry, they let them thrive, knowing prosperity was contagious. Today, the dagger forces us to rethink what empire meant in the Bronze Age. Far from a monolithic juggernaut, Hittite power was a tapestry woven with golden threads of mutual benefit, its strength lying not in domination but in clever, calculated trust. Carved from volcanic stone, the Sphinx Gate statue crouches at the ruins of Alaca Höyük, its lion's body tensed as if ready to spring, its human face frozen in an enigmatic smile. This isn't just another guardian figure, it's a cultural chimera, a bridge between worlds. While Egypt's sphinxes gaze serenely toward eternity, this Anatolian cousin snarls with coiled energy, its wings swept back like a falcon mid-dive. The hybrid design wasn't accidental. When archaeologists first unearthed it, they noticed something startling. The statue's torso bore hieroglyphs naming Pharaoh Thutmose III, while its base featured Hittite symbols invoking the storm god Teshub. Here was a visual handshake, a deliberate blending of Egyptian divinity and Hittite might. The statue's journey is as fragmented as its missing pieces. In the late 19th century, German excavators shipped its shattered wings and pedestal to Berlin, where they still reside in the Pergamon Museum's vaults. Meanwhile, the reconstructed torso guards Alaca Höyük's entrance, a divided legacy that speaks to colonialism's complicated grip on archaeology. But even in pieces, the statue tells a story of artistic cross-pollination. The Hittites didn't just copy Egyptian motifs, they remixed them. The traditional Nemes headdress of pharaohs was replaced with a Hittite royal tiara, and the usual Sphinx beard was omitted, perhaps to distance it from overtly Egyptian associations. This was diplomacy in stone, a way to claim equal status with Egypt while asserting local identity. What's truly groundbreaking is how the statue redefines Hittite spirituality. Unlike Egyptian sphinxes, which often represented solar deities, this creature guarded water sources. Alaca Höyük's gate once channeled spring runoff, and the sphinx's positioning suggests it was seen as a protector of fertility, a role reinforced by carvings of rain clouds near its paws. The Hittites took a foreign symbol and poured it into their own cosmological mold, turning a desert emblem into a herald of Anatolia's life-giving storms. The Berlin fragments add another layer. Museum scans revealed chisel marks where gold leaf once adhered, confirming ancient accounts of Hittite statues sheathed in precious metals. Even more intriguing are the pigments still clinging to the wing's lapis blue mixed with local ochre, a chromatic marriage of imported and native materials. This sphinx wasn't just stone, it was a riot of color, a gleaming hybrid that must have dazzled visitors approaching the city gates. Today, the statue's duality challenges simplistic narratives of cultural influence. It's not a knockoff or a tribute, it's a reinvention, proof that the Hittites didn't just absorb foreign ideas. They digested them, transforming borrowed symbols into something fiercely their own. And in its fragmented state, it whispers a cautionary tale. Civilizations may rise and fall, but their artifacts keep speaking, even when scattered across continents. Buried beneath the ruins of a Hittite courthouse, the silver Hittite code tablet gleamed with unexpected wisdom, its etched laws revealing a legal system far more nuanced than the brutal eye for an eye justice of its time. Unlike Hammurabi's code, which famously prescribed draconian punishments, this tablet's clauses read like a Bronze Age manifesto for fairness. Take land disputes. Where Babylonian law favored the wealthy, Hittite judges were instructed to hear testimony from both sides, even sending officials to inspect contested fields personally. One remarkable passage states, "If a man's boundary stone is moved in secret, the offender shall not lose his hand, but restore the land twofold. No mutilation, no bloodshed, just restitution." This wasn't mere leniency, it was pragmatism. The Hittites understood that crippling a farmer over a feud weakened the entire community, but the real shock lies in the tablet's treatment of women. While Hammurabi's code reduced wives to property, Hittite law granted them startling autonomy. A divorced woman could reclaim her dowry down to the last sheep. Widows inherited their husband's estate outright, no male guardian required. Most revolutionary, a clause protecting women from forced remarriage. If a widow says, "I wish to remain," none shall compel her. For a society often painted as warlike, these laws reveal a respect for female agency unmatched in the ancient Near East. Then there's the witchcraft section, a blend of superstition and proto-science. Accusations required proof. If a man says, "My neighbor hexed my crops," let him bring the blighted stalks for examination. No burning suspects on hearsay, evidence was demanded. Some spells were even catalogued by effect, differentiating between field curses and love charms, suggesting early attempts to classify magic empirically. The tablet's silver medium itself speaks volumes. While most legal texts were clay, this one's precious metal hints at its sacred status. Laws weren't just rules, but divine gifts. Archaeologists found it placed deliberately near a temple altar, as if the Hittites saw justice as a covenant with the gods. Comparing it to Hammurabi's stele is revelatory. Both texts open with kingly boasts, but where Hammurabi claims the gods appointed him to make justice prevail, the Hittite preamble admits laws were debated by elders before ratification. One glorifies autocracy, the other collective wisdom. Modern jurists might admire its gradations of guilt. Theft during famine carried lighter penalties, for a hungry man steals not from malice but necessity. Such context-sensitive justice feels startlingly contemporary. This silver slab does more than list rules. It unveils a civilization that saw law not as a weapon, but as a loom threading individual rights and communal harmony into a fabric sturdy enough to hold an empire together. Rising from the shores of a tranquil lake in central Anatolia, the Eflatun Spring Monument isn't just a shrine, it's a symphony in stone where engineering meets the divine. Carved into a massive limestone block, the monument's reliefs cascade like water itself, depicting a pantheon of mountain gods and river nymphs frozen mid-flow, their hands outstretched as if blessing the springs bubbling beneath them. This was no passive altar, it was a hydraulic masterpiece, a carefully designed system of channels and basins that transformed natural springs into a sacred spectacle. The Hittites didn't just worship water here, they choreographed it, directing its flow through carved spouts so that every ripple and splash became part of the ritual. The central relief reveals the genius behind the design. A towering figure, likely the storm god Teshub, stands flanked by lesser deities, all framed by undulating waves that mirror the actual currents below. But look closer and you'll notice something astonishing. The waves aren't just decorative, they're functional gutters channeling rainwater into hidden cisterns that fed the spring during dry seasons. This wasn't mere symbolism, it was sacred hydrology, a way to ensure the waters, and by extension the god's favor, never ran dry. Modern engineers have marveled at the precision of the gradients, calculated to prevent erosion while maximizing flow. The Hittites didn't just build monuments, they engineered ecosystems. What's even more striking is how the monument reflects a world view where nature and divinity were inseparable. Each carved deity corresponds to a real geological feature. The bearded god represents the nearby volcanic peak, while the serpentine figures embody the spring's subterranean sources. For the Hittites, water wasn't a resource, it was a living entity, a bridge between earth and sky. Local farmers still whisper tales of the monument's power, claiming its waters heal ailments when drunk under a full moon. Science might dismiss this as folklore, but the Hittites would have nodded knowingly. To them, the spring's minerals weren't just therapeutic, they were the god's own medicine. The real revelation came when archaeologists discovered matching reliefs 50 miles away at Yalbert. Same deities, same artistic style, but at a site with no natural water source. This wasn't coincidence, it was a network. The Hittites were marking sacred hydrological nodes, creating a spiritual map of Anatolia's waterways. Eflatun Pınar wasn't standalone, it was a hub in a continent-wide web of belief. Today, the monument's quiet genius lingers. Unlike the towering walls of Hattusa or the grandeur of Yazılıkaya, Eflatun Pınar whispers. It doesn't command awe, it invites contemplation. Stand there at dawn and you'll see why. Mist rises off the spring, weaving through the carved gods until stone and vapor seem to breathe as one. In that moment, 3,000 years collapse and you're left with a truth the Hittites knew well, that water isn't just life. It's eternity. Towering over the museum floor in Ankara, the Boğazköy storm god statue commands attention not just for its sheer size, but for the seismic shift it represents in our understanding of ancient religion. Carved from jet-black basalt, this 2.5-meter colossus once stood in the heart of Hattusa, his hollowed-out hands originally gripping a thunderbolt plated in gold, now lost to time. That missing attribute holds a clue to his power. When sunlight struck the gilded lightning, it wouldn't just shimmer, it would ignite, transforming the statue into a living spectacle, as if the god himself were summoning storms. The parallels to Zeus are impossible to ignore. The statue's stance, one arm raised to hurl the thunderbolt, the other clutching a symbolic bundle of wheat, mirrors later Greek depictions of Zeus almost exactly. But here's the twist. This Hittite deity predates the earliest known Zeus imagery by at least 500 years. The iconography didn't just resemble, it inspired. Archaeologists tracing the spread of storm god cults note how Mycenaean traders venturing into Anatolia would have seen statues like this in Hittite cities. The concept of a sky god wielding lightning wasn't borrowed. It was inherited, adapted, and passed down until it reached Olympus. What's revolutionary is the statue's material duality. Basalt, a stone forged in volcanic fire, was deliberately chosen for its association with the underworld, while the gold bolt symbolized celestial power. Together, they embodied the Hittite belief that storms weren't just weather. They were cosmic battles where the god bridged heaven and earth. The statue's discovery in the 1930s rewrote religious history. Before then, scholars assumed Zeus's imagery was purely Greek. Now we see the chain, Hittite Teshub to Hurrian Teshub, then to Luwian Tarhunt, and finally to Zeus, each culture adding layers but keeping the core, the raised arm, the lethal lightning, the unshakable authority. Most poignant is what the statue lost and what endured. Looters stripped its gold millennia ago, but the basalt remains, its surface still etched with hieroglyphs calling the god, the one who makes the mountains tremble. In that, we grasp a truth the Hittites knew well. Empires fade, but their gods, they just change names. Carved high into the cliffs of the ancient King's Road, the Karabal rock relief gazes across the valley like a sentinel frozen in time. For decades, travelers mistook this towering figure for an Egyptian pharaoh. Its proud stance and regal staff seemed to echo the iconography of the Nile. But when sunlight hits the inscription just right, the truth emerges. Those aren't Egyptian cartouches framing the warrior's face. They're Luwian hieroglyphs spelling out a name that changes everything. Tarkasnawa, king of Mera, a once powerful vassal state of the Hittite Empire. This colossal relief isn't just a royal portrait, it's a geopolitical billboard. Positioned along the main trade route linking Hattusa to the Aegean, the carving served as both landmark and manifesto. Every merchant, diplomat, or soldier passing beneath it would crane their neck to see the king's image, one hand gripping a spear, the other resting on a curved sword, a weapon unique to Anatolia. The message was clear: this wasn't Egyptian territory. This was Hittite sphere of influence guarded by a local ruler whose authority flowed from the empire. The hieroglyphs tell a richer story. Unlike formal court records, the inscription mixes pride with humility. Tarkasnawa names himself the beloved of the storm god, but also the servant of the great king, a nod to his Hittite overlord. It's a delicate balance, asserting regional power while acknowledging imperial hierarchy. Even the relief style is hybrid. The king's almond-shaped eyes reflect Hittite artistic conventions, but his pleated kilt is pure Luwian, a blend that mirrors the cultural interplay of the borderlands. Early misidentification wasn't just academic error, it obscured a crucial truth. The relief's Egyptian aura came from a shared visual language of kingship. Both cultures used monumental art to project power. But where pharaohs depicted themselves smiting enemies, Tarkasnawa stands calm, almost contemplative. His power isn't demonstrated through violence but through presence. The difference is subtle but profound. This isn't a conqueror's boast, it's a statement of stability. Modern laser scans revealed SOMETHING, Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Faint tool marks show the relief was reworked, likely when Tarkasnawa's status shifted. Originally, his crown bore fewer horns, a lesser rank. As his alliance with the Hittites deepened, the horns multiplied, a tactile record of climbing the political ladder. Even the sword was altered, its curve exaggerated to match evolving Hittite designs. Today, the relief's greatest lesson isn't carved in stone, it's carved by stone. Weathering patterns prove it once faced a now vanished companion piece across the valley, perhaps a Hittite emperor. Together, they'd have formed a gate of sorts, a monumental welcome to the empire's western reaches. The Caribal warrior doesn't just guard a road, he guards our understanding of how empires flex and bend, how local pride and imperial ambition could coexist in the unblinking gaze of a cliffside king. Tucked away in the royal quarter of Hattusa, the Hattusa green stone glows with an eerie, almost unnatural sheen, a massive, egg-shaped boulder so perfectly polished it looks like it was dropped from the heavens. Unlike the rough-hewn monuments surrounding it, this stone's surface is flawlessly smooth, catching sunlight in a way that makes it seem lit from within. Some scholars argue it's a meteorite fallen to Earth with cosmic significance. Others believe it served as the base for a long-lost throne, its curvature designed to cradle royal authority literally and symbolically. But what's undeniable is its magnetism, not just metaphorical. Visitors today report that their compass needles skew unpredictably near it, fueling whispers of hidden metallic properties. The stone's origins are as cryptic as its purpose. No quarry in Anatolia produces rock of this exact hue, a deep, bottle-green shade that darkens in stormy weather. Geologists have debated for decades, is it nephrite jade transported thousands of miles from Central Asia, or could it be a rare form of serpentine, infused with minerals that give it that uncanny glow? The Hittites left no inscriptions explaining its presence, but its placement speaks volumes. It sits precisely where three ceremonial roads converge, aligning with the summer solstice sunrise. At dawn on that day, shadows from nearby pillars stretch like fingers to touch its base, as if awakening something dormant. Modern visitors have turned the stone into a living artifact. Tradition holds that rubbing its surface while whispering a wish carries petitions directly to the Hittite gods. Over the years, countless hands have worn patches of it even smoother, their oils deepening its color in streaks. Archaeologists initially dismissed this as vandalism until infrared scans revealed something astonishing. The wear patterns match ancient handprints pressed into the stone's lower curves. The Hittites themselves may have touched it just as reverently, their rituals echoing across millennia. Perhaps the most haunting theory comes from cuneiform tablets found in a nearby archive. One fragment mentions a stone that drinks the sky, gifted to the Hittites by the Casca tribes, an enigmatic people who inhabited the Black Sea's shimmering coasts. Was this their tribute, a sacred object traded for peace? The tablet breaks off mid-sentence, leaving the green stone to guard its secrets as stubbornly as it's guarded its polish through 30 centuries of rain and wind. What endures is its quiet power. Unlike the empire's grand statues or gilded weapons, this uninscribed rock needs no proclamation. It simply is a mystery that refuses to be solved, a witness to royal oaths and modern hopes alike. Touch its surface today, and you're not just touching stone, you're brushing against time itself. Discovered in a modest storeroom at Lipanar, far from the grandeur of Hattusa's palaces, these humble clay tablets might seem unremarkable at first glance, no gold inlay, no dramatic reliefs. But press your finger against their sun-warmed surfaces, and you'll trace the fingerprints of scribes who recorded something far more vital than royal decrees, the heartbeat of daily survival. This archive isn't about kings, it's about farmers staring at parched fields, priests scanning the night sky, and a civilization grappling with forces even their mighty empire couldn't control. One tablet, cracked at the edges but still legible, logs a desperate plea from a village elder. The earth is salt, the grain withers. Send the storm god's priest before the children hunger. Beneath it, a bureaucrat's crisp reply notes the dispatch of ritual specialists and seed reserves. What reads like dry administration is actually a lifeline, proof that the Hittite state didn't just tax its people, it sustained them. The precision of these records is staggering. Quantities of barley, shifts in rainfall, even soil quality are meticulously tracked, revealing an agricultural bureaucracy as sophisticated as its military. But the true marvel is a folded tablet labeled Words of the Moon. Unrolled, it predicts a lunar eclipse down to the hour, correlating it with the river's anger will follow, a reference to observed floods post-eclipse likely caused by tidal shifts. Modern astronomers compared its dates with celestial models. The alignment was flawless. This wasn't magic, it was meticulous observation passed down through generations. The scribes even noted a repeating 18-year cycle centuries before Babylon's famed Saros records. Yet these tablets also expose a chilling vulnerability. Over decades, the reports grow frantic. Fifth year of thin harvests, one laments. The augurs read entrails, but the skies stay empty. Another describes cattle sacrifices piling up at shrines, a grim barter for rain. We're watching climate change unfold in cuneiform, a prolonged drought that may have weakened the empire long before invaders arrived, the most poignant entry. A farmer's sketch beside crop tallies, a stick figure man raising arms not to gods but to a sun grown cruel. Oracle reports add another layer. Diviners interpreted everything from snake movements to wine swirls, but their methods weren't mere superstition. A cracked liver's furrows indicated drought, smooth meant abundance. By cross-referencing these prophecies with harvest logs, we see a system blending faith and empiricism. When priests warned of blight, grain stores were preemptively shifted. The line between temple and state didn't exist, it was all survival. What makes Lipanar unique is its intimacy. These aren't monuments to power, but whispers of resilience. In one corner of a tablet, a scribe doodled a child's handprint, perhaps his own son's, pressed into the clay before firing. It's a fleeting human moment in an archive of crises, reminding us that behind every eclipse prediction or grain tally, there were lives hanging in the balance. The Hittites may have measured time in rains and battles, but these tablets measure something far more universal: the fragile dance between civilization and nature. High on the cliff face of Ivries, a king stands frozen in eternal homage, his hands outstretched toward a deity who pours not thunder but grapes. The Ivries rock relief isn't just a monument, it's a time capsule, capturing the moment when the Hittite world didn't end with the Bronze Age collapse but transformed. Towering 4 meters tall, King Warpalawas of Tuwana, a once obscure vassal state, gazes up at the storm god Tahunzes, his robe embroidered with vines so lifelike you can almost taste the wine. This isn't the art of conquest, it's the art of survival. While empires crumbled around them, this relief, carved in the 8th century BCE, centuries after Hattusa's fall, proves the Hittite legacy didn't vanish. It went local, flourishing in the kingdoms that outlasted the empire's collapse. The carving symbolism is intoxicating. Tahunzes holds a sickle and grape cluster, his divine power channeled into fertility rather than war. Warpalawas, smaller in scale as befits a mortal, wears a Phrygian-style cap, a nod to new cultural currents, but his stance is pure Hittite tradition. 1 foot forward, a posture reserved for rulers since the empire's zenith. Every chisel stroke here is a negotiation between old and new. The vines snaking around the frame aren't mere decoration, they're a bold declaration. Where Hittite kings once boasted of battle trophies, Warpalawas boasts of vineyards, his wealth measured in vats rather than victories. What's revolutionary is the relief's artistic DNA. The god's braided beard and layered robes echo Assyrian styles, while the king's delicate eyelashes and rounded face show Eurasian influences. This wasn't cultural surrender, it was savvy adaptation. By blending foreign motifs with Hittite iconography, Warpalawas sent a message. His kingdom could honor its roots while dancing with new powers. The Assyrians, advancing from the south, might have demanded tribute, but they couldn't erase identity. Modern botanists have even identified the grape variety depicted, a hardy Anatolian strain still used in Turkish winemaking today. The relief doesn't just depict abundance, it encodes agricultural knowledge, a farmer's almanac in stone. Most striking is the relief's quiet defiance. While Assyrian monuments show kings trampling enemies, Warpalawas kneels, not in submission but in collaboration with the divine. His power comes from stewardship, not slaughter. In that gesture, we see the Hittite spirit enduring, not as an empire but as an idea. That true sovereignty lies in the land's bounty and the god's favor, not just the sword's edge. Standing before Ivries today, you're witnessing a rebirth. The vines carved into that rock, they're still grown on the slopes below, the storm god's name. It lingers in local folklore as Tahun. This relief isn't a tombstone for a dead empire. It's a seed, proving some roots run too deep for even time to pull free. Buried in the mud of a forgotten battlefield, a set of bronze linchpins no larger than a thumb tells a story that rewrote military history. These unassuming artifacts engraved with snarling griffins and worn smooth from chariot axles prove what scholars had only guessed. Hittite war chariots didn't just carry 2 men like their Egyptian rivals. They carried 3. That extra warrior wasn't just another soldier, he was the game changer that turned chariots from transportation into annihilation machines. The genius lies in the linchpin's design. While Egyptian versions were purely functional simple pegs to keep wheels attached, Hittite smiths transformed them into tactical manuals. Each griffin faced pin slots into the axle at an angle that reveals the chariot's reinforced structure. Modern engineers tested replicas and found the weight distribution only makes sense for a trio: a driver steering the horses, a shield bearer deflecting arrows, and a spearman leaning out to strike. This three-man configuration wasn't just incremental improvement, it revolutionized close combat. Egyptian charioteers had to choose between holding reins or swinging swords. Hittite crews attacked as a coordinated unit while moving at full gallop. Battlefield archaeology confirms their advantage. At the site of Kadesh, where Hittite chariots famously outmaneuvered Ramses II's forces, the soil holds clues. Wheel rut spacing is wider than Egyptian tracks, allowing for heavier, sturdier frames. Arrowheads cluster where Hittite shield bearers would have stood, while spear tips concentrate in kill zones matching the third warrior's reach. The linchpins griffins weren't just decoration, they symbolized the hybrid power these crews wielded: lion's ferocity with eagle speed. What's startling is how this innovation spread. Centuries later, Assyrian reliefs show three-man chariots with almost identical linchpin designs, right down to the mythical beasts. Even Homer's Iliad describes Trojan chariots carrying driver, warrior, and aide, a lineage tracing straight back to Hatti. The Hittites didn't just win battles, they set the template for ancient warfare's most iconic weapon. Yet for all their brilliance, these pins nearly went unnoticed. Unlike gilded swords or royal stelae, they were workhorse components tossed aside when broken. That they survived at all is testament to the Hittites' bronze smithing mastery. Their alloy mix higher in tin than contemporaries prevented corrosion, preserving tactical secrets in plain sight. Today, these tiny artifacts challenge the narrative that Egypt dominated Bronze Age warfare. Sometimes history's greatest disruptions come not from towering monuments, but from the overlooked parts that held everything together. The Bittic vase doesn't just hold wine, it holds a wedding frozen in clay, a moment where two empires became family. Unearthed near modern-day Ankara, this painted vessel shimmers with a scene so rare it made archaeologists gasp. A Hittite noblewoman, her conical hat towering like a crown, clasping hands with a bearded groom whose flounced robe screams Babylon. This isn't just art, it's a diplomatic handshake pressed into ceramic for eternity. The details are staggering. The bride's hat isn't merely decorative, its layered tiers mimic the ziggurats of her groom's homeland, a wearable bridge between cultures. Her hand rests not on her husband's but on a ceremonial dagger between them, its blade sheathed in a cloth embroidered with Hittite sun disks and Babylonian crescent moons. Every brushstroke here is politics. What's revolutionary is the guests. Flanking the couple are figures in mixed attire, some in Hittite tunics, others in Babylonian shawls, but their gestures are identically Hittite, palms upturned, fingers curled, the exact pose seen in Yazılıkaya's processional gods. This wasn't just a marriage, it was a cultural transfusion. Even the drink being poured isn't wine. Residue analysis revealed traces of date palm and honey, a Mesopotamian brew served in Anatolian cups. The vase itself is the marriage certificate, its curve symbolizing the union of two worlds. Then there's the conical hat, an archaeological Rosetta Stone. Similar headdresses appear in seals from Mari and Alalak, always worn by women in cross-cultural unions. But here, the hat's apex is capped with a tiny golden orb, a detail matched only in Hattusa's temple inventories describing the bride's crown of distant skies. Was this orb a dowry jewel, a meteorite fragment linking her to celestial powers? The vase won't say, but it's careful to show the hat's weight, the bride's neck slightly bent, a human touch reminding us these were real people, not just pawns on a geopolitical board. The ritual's climax hides in the background. Behind the couple, a bull is being led to sacrifice, its ropes held by attendants from both nations. This wasn't just ceremony, it was covenant. Hittite texts describe such blood binding, where slaughtered animals symbolize the price of betrayal. But here's the twist, the bull's horns are gilded, a Babylonian touch absent in Hittite rites. The message, this alliance would be governed by new rules written together. Most poignant are the children. Tiny figures barely taller than the vase's rim hold garlands at the scene's edge. Their clothes blend elements of both cultures, Hittite belts over Babylonian fringe. They're the living future this marriage was meant to secure. Their very outfits a promise that the next generation would inherit not just land but legacy. Today, the Inandık Vase challenges how we see ancient diplomacy. We imagine treaties signed in dust or etched on silver, but sometimes the most binding contracts were painted on clay, sipped from during feasts and passed down as heirlooms. This vessel isn't just depicting history, it's preserving the moment two empires chose to become something new, one carefully painted toast at a time. The Sarissa bronze plaque might fit in the palm of your hand, but its etchings hold the blueprint of an empire's military dominance. Unearthed near the ruins of a Hittite barracks, this small bronze sheet is scratched with what looks at first glance like abstract stick figures until you realize you're staring at the oldest known tactical diagram in history. Each scratch is a soldier, each groove is a siege tower. Together, they reveal the Hittite art of war in stunning detail. The top register shows a phalanx formation, shields interlocked like turtle shells, a tactic historians thought the Greeks invented centuries later. Below, battering rams advance under covered canopies, their design so precise that modern engineers have reconstructed working models from these very lines. But the real revelation is a tiny marking near the plaque's edge, a chariot drawn sideways, its crew poised to strike from an oblique angle. This isn't just a diagram. It's the playbook Muwatalli II used to outmaneuver Ramses the Great at Kadesh. Zoom in on those chariots and you'll notice something peculiar. Unlike the straight-ahead charges favored by Egyptians, these Hittite vehicles angle sharply toward gaps between enemy units. Contemporary accounts describe Ramses' confusion when his forces were struck as if by a scorpion's tail, precisely the pincer movement illustrated here. The plaque even accounts for terrain, with wavy lines indicating marshy ground where heavier Egyptian chariots would bog down. This was warfare refined to geometry, every maneuver calculated to exploit an opponent's weaknesses. Then there's the plaque's namesake, the sarissa. Though later associated with Macedonian pikes, the term originally described these Hittite spear formations. The diagram shows soldiers bracing long poles against their hips, creating a deadly hedge that stopped enemy charges cold. At Kadesh, such formations funneled Egyptian troops into kill zones where archers could rain death from above. The brilliance lies in the spacing. Each figure stands precisely 2 spear lengths apart, a balance between coverage and mobility that later Greek generals would emulate without knowing its origin. Most startling is the siege section. Among towers and ladders hides a crude but recognizable ballista, its torsion springs represented by coiled lines. For decades, scholars credited the Greeks with inventing such artillery in the 4th century BCE. This plaque predates that by nearly 1,000 years. Recent experiments with Hittite-style torsion weapons confirm their range, up to 300 meters, enough to clear Kadesh's walls. The implications rewrite military history. What we call Greek firepower might actually be Hittite ingenuity repurposed across generations. The plaque's back holds the final clue, a smudged but legible scribe's note in Akkadian, for the eyes of the Gal Mesedi only. These elite royal guards were Muwatalli's personal strategists. That the king entrusted them with this tiny metal sheet speaks volumes. In an age when battle plans were memorized or destroyed, this plaque was meant to endure, its lessons passed down like sacred text. Today, the sarissa plaque does more than document tactics. It reveals a mindset. The Hittites didn't just fight harder, they fought smarter, turning bronze and parchment into weapons as deadly as any sword. And in its weathered grooves, we discern the essence of their dominance, not brute force, but the relentless refinement of thought into action. On the surface of the Inandık vase, time stands still mid-leap, a lithe figure suspended upside down over the arching back of a bull, fingertips brushing its horns as if daring gravity to intervene. This isn't just decoration, it's a snapshot of a ritual so precise, so audacious, that its twin only appears 600 miles away in the palaces of Crete. The parallels are uncanny. Minoan frescoes at Knossos depict near-identical bull leapers, their ochre-skinned acrobats frozen in the same gravity-defying pivot. But here's the twist: the Hittite version predates the Minoan by at least a century. That timing rewrites the story of cultural exchange in the Bronze Age. This vase doesn't just show a shared ritual, it proves the flow of ideas wasn't one way. Anatolia wasn't just receiving influences from the Aegean, it was sending them. Look closer and the differences speak volumes. Where Minoan leapers grasp the bull's horns to somersault, the Hittite athlete's hands hover almost reverent. The bull itself is no mere obstacle. Its muscles are carved with anatomical precision, its eye a spiral echoing storm god symbolism. This isn't sport for sport's sake. The vase's lower register holds the key. Priests stand ready with curved blades, bowls catching invisible streams. The leap wasn't entertainment, it was prelude. In Hittite texts, bulls embody the storm god's raw power, and their sacrifice often followed displays of dominance over the sacred animal, the acrobat's dance. A test of divine favor, proving human mastery over nature's fury before the final act of devotion. Yet the Minoan connection can't be ignored. Both cultures shared a reverence for bulls, but their interpretations diverged like branches of the same tree. For the Minoans, bull leaping may have been initiation, a coming-of-age trial immortalized in palace art. For the Hittites, it was likely part of the Purely festival, where the king reenacted the storm god's battles. The vase's hidden detail settles nothing. A small figure, barely visible, holds what might be a rope or a snake, suggesting yet another layer of symbolism lost to time. What's undeniable is the craftsmanship. The leaper's spine curves with lifelike tension, his ribs visible under stretched skin, a detail no Minoan fresco captures. The artist didn't just witness this event, he understood its physical cost. Modern gymnasts who have recreated the move report that the torque alone could dislocate shoulders. This wasn't art from hearsay, it was born from lived, bone-deep knowledge. The debate endures because the vase refuses to simplify. Is it a tribute to athleticism or a freeze frame of sacrifice? The answer might be both. In a civilization where every gesture carried cosmic weight, the distinction between sport and sacrament may not have existed. The Husseinid vase isn't just a scene, it's a question carved in clay, asking us to reconsider where ritual ends and life begins. Baked into the clay of the autocurry tablet lies a melody frozen in time, a series of wedge-shaped marks that, when deciphered, became the oldest known musical notation in Anatolia. Unlike later Greek systems that used letters to denote pitch, this Hittite scribe employed cuneiform signs for numbers, each corresponding to intervals on a 9-stringed lyre. When archaeologists reconstructed the sequence, the haunting pentatonic scale that emerged wasn't just notes on a page. It was the voice of the goddess Inara herself, summoned anew after 3 millennia of silence. The tablet's discovery in a temple archive was no accident. Inara, the Hittite deity of wild animals and fertile plains, demanded music as part of her rites, not as accompaniment but as conduit. The instructions etched above the notation describe a ritual where priests played this very melody to mimic bird calls, luring sacred doves to the temple courtyard. The timing was precise, dawn on the spring equinox when the goddess's presence was believed to ride on migrating wings. Modern ornithologists have identified the species from the intervals, the ascending fifth matching the Eurasian collared dove's coo, the trill mirroring a nightingale's warning call. This wasn't mere imitation, it was sonic alchemy, blurring the line between human artistry and divine language. What's revelatory is the notation's sophistication. The tablet divides the melody into repeating cycles of 5 beats, a rhythm still found in Turkic folk music today. Beneath the main staff, smaller marks indicate finger positions for damping strings, creating staccato effects that mimic rustling feathers. The composition even includes what modern musicians would call dynamics phrases marked quiet as nesting, alternating with loud as storm winds, mirroring Inara's dual nature as nurturer and huntress. Ethnomusicologists who have performed the piece note its peculiar resonance. Played on a replica lyre with gut strings, the melody's overtones seem to hover in the air longer than physics should allow, an acoustic phenomenon amplified by Hittite temples' barrel-vaulted ceilings. One musician described the experience as not playing music but uncovering it, as if the notes had always existed, waiting to be woken. The tablet's true magic, though, lies in its margins. Faint scribbles in a novice's hand show a student practicing the notation, their mistakes smoothed over by a teacher's corrections. In those erased errors, we glimpse something profoundly human, not just the transmission of sacred knowledge, but the struggle to touch the divine through imperfect hands. Today, when you hear this melody ripple across the centuries, you're not just hearing history, you're hearing devotion, etched in clay and longing, one meticulous note at a time. Nestled in the tomb of a Hittite queen at Alaca Höyük, a pair of golden earrings glimmer with secrets that span continents. These aren't mere ornaments, they're masterpieces of granulation, their surfaces alive with hundreds of microscopic gold beads arranged into pomegranate clusters, each berry no larger than a pinhead. The technique alone is staggering. Hittite smiths would have heated gold dust until it formed tiny spheres, then painstakingly soldered them using plant sap fluxes, a method so precise modern jewelers still debate how it was achieved without magnification. But the real revelation lies in their pedigree. The gold's chemical signature matches Mycenaean mines in the Peloponnese, while the pomegranate motif, a fruit native to Anatolia, proves these weren't imported trinkets. They were diplomatic hybrids crafted by Hittite hands from Greek gold, blending two worlds in wearable art. The pomegranate's symbolism runs deep. In Hittite fertility rites, priestesses would crush the fruit's ruby seeds against temple altars, their juice symbolizing both blood and bounty. Queens wore these earrings during sacred marriages, where the ruler enacted the storm god's union with the earth. Each dangling granule wasn't just decoration, it was a prayer for agricultural abundance and dynastic continuity. Modern excavations reveal an eerie pattern. These earrings appear exclusively in tombs of queens who died in childbirth or whose heirs ruled successfully. They weren't just jewelry, they were amulets charged with the most urgent hopes of an empire. What's revolutionary is the trade route they map. Mycenaean gold in a Hittite queen's tomb suggests a backchannel exchange bypassing official records. Tablets from Hattusa mention gifts from Ahiowa, likely Mycenaean Greece, but these earrings' intimate context hints at something rarer, a queen's private network. Perhaps they were bridal gifts from a Greek princess or payment for Hittite mercenaries guarding Aegean trade posts. The granulation style offers clues. Mycenaean workshops preferred larger beads, while Hittite smiths excelled in minute detail. Here, the technique splits the difference, suggesting collaborative craftsmanship. The earring's construction reveals another layer. X-rays show the hoops were cast in two halves, a Hittite innovation allowing them to flex without breaking. This wasn't just beauty, it was ergonomics designed for comfort during long court ceremonies. Even the hook's curvature follows the exact angle of a queen's ear cartilage, preserved in one tomb's skeletal remains. Such precision speaks of royal artisans who knew their patron's anatomy as intimately as their mythology. Today, these earrings embody a paradox. They're both intensely personal, worn against skin, whispering in the dark, and profoundly political. Every pomegranate seed a treaty, every gold bead a crossed border. In their shimmer, we see the Bronze Age not as a patchwork of isolated kingdoms, but as a tapestry, threaded together by the hands of queens who understood that true power often comes draped in gold. Forged from bronze so pure it hums when struck, the Neric weather god's axe isn't just a weapon, it's a storm captured in metal. Unearthed near the fog-shrouded slopes of the Pontic Mountains, this ceremonial blade bears an engraving that cracked a century-old archaeological mystery. A jagged lightning bolt intersecting with a mountain peak, the unmistakable emblem of Neric, the Hittites' most sacred lost city. For decades, scholars scoured ancient texts describing this holy site where kings performed rites to calm the sky's anger. But its location remained speculation until this axe's discovery in the 1980s. The lightning motif matched a previously ignored cliff carving 20 miles north, leading excavators straight to Neric's buried temples. The axe's design reveals why this city was so vital. Unlike battle axes meant for cleaving flesh, this one's blade is improbably thin, its edge deliberately blunted. Those imperfections weren't oversights, they were acoustic engineering. When swung during ceremonies, the axe produced a distinctive whistling crescendo. Recreated experiments show it mimics the rising wail of wind before a tempest. Priests would have used this sonic illusion to summon storms, their choreographed movements syncing with the eerie tones. The handle's hollow core held another secret. Residue analysis detected traces of beeswax and iron oxide, a mixture that, when heated, emitted ozone's sharp scent, the smell of lightning made tangible. But the real genius lies in the engraving's hidden layers. Under ultraviolet light, microscopic grooves along the lightning bolt's path glint with embedded quartz dust. These weren't decorative, they were ritual maps. Each jag corresponds to a mountain pass where Neric's priests tracked storms, marking where clouds gathered fastest or rain fell hardest. The axe wasn't just a symbol of divine power, it was a meteorological tool encoding generations of weather observation. Modern climatologists compared these markings with satellite data and found a startling match. The paths still predict summer storm patterns today. The axe's rediscovery also solved Neric's greatest riddle: why the Hittites abandoned it. Beneath its blade's mounting, archaeologists found charred barley grains and melted lead, remnants of a desperate final ritual. The accompanying tablet fragments speak of silent skies and parched altars. Neric didn't fall to invaders, it was forsaken when the rain stopped, its weather gods seemingly deaf to prayers. The axe was buried upright at the temple threshold, a last attempt to pierce the heavens, one final strike from a civilization that moved mountains to court the storms, only to be undone by their absence. Today, the axe whispers a lesson about faith and climate. Its engravings don't just depict lightning, they track a civilization's dialogue with forces beyond its control. To hold this artifact is to grasp the paradox of the Hittite world, a people who wielded bronze like sorcery, yet knelt before the thunder, knowing some forces must be pleaded with, never commanded. On a shelf in the Ankara Museum, a clay model the size of a teacup holds the weight of empires. The Kuşaklı Oracle House is no toy. It's a precise-scale replica of a hepatoscopy shrine, complete with miniature altars and delicately sculpted animal livers, each groove and lobe rendered with anatomical exactness. This unassuming artifact opens a window into one of history's most consequential decision-making systems, where the fate of nations hung on the interpretation of a sacrificed lamb's innards. The details are chilling in their specificity. Tiny bronze blades rest beside clay livers, their edges dulled from ritual use. The shrine's ceiling beams are carved with astrological symbols matching cuneiform accounts of auspicious days for divination. Most striking are the liver models themselves, some smooth, others with deliberate blemishes like cysts or extra lobes. These weren't random, they corresponded to a codified system where every bump and crevice held meaning. A groove near the gallbladder might warn of famine, while a speckled texture could signal military betrayal. Kings didn't just consult these readings, they staked their reigns on them. Modern scholars have decoded the process through surviving manuals. Priests would sacrifice a sheep, then lay its liver alongside models like these, comparing the real organ's features to their ideal templates. The parallels to modern medical diagnosis are eerie. Just as doctors today might compare an X-ray to textbook examples, Hittite seers sought deviations from the norm. The clay shrine's layout reveals their methodology. Models were arranged in tiers with simpler, training livers for novices below master specimens used by high priests. What defies expectation is how systematic these divinations became. Far from random guesswork, hepatoscopy developed into a complex science. One excavated tablet lists over 300 liver features and their interpretations, cross-referenced with celestial events. If a lunar eclipse coincided with a liver's enlarged portal vein, the omen meant drought. If the same vein appeared normal during Mercury's rise, it signaled coming wealth. This wasn't superstition, it was early data science, an attempt to find patterns in chaos. The model's most revealing feature is hidden underneath. Flip it over, and you'll find a tiny compartment containing miniature clay tablets, microscopic copies of actual oracle reports. One recounts King Mursili II halting a campaign because a liver's left lobe drooped like a wilted leaf. Historical records confirm he withdrew troops that season due to plague. Another describes a queen overruling her advisors when the liver showed sunburst veins, insisting on peace talks that later proved successful. Critics might dismiss this as coincidence, but the Hittites tracked their accuracy obsessively. Tablet archives note when predictions failed, with scribes analyzing why. Perhaps the sheep was ill or the moon phase misread. This constant refinement turned divination into something startlingly modern, a feedback loop where outcomes improved methods. The Oracle House model's genius lies in its duality. It served as both training tool and theological anchor, reminding even skeptics that hepatoscopy wasn't about magic. It was about humility. Before declaring war or signing treaties, rulers had to confront the messy, unpredictable reality of life quite literally held in their hands. In that sheep's liver, they saw the universe's refusal to be easily deciphered, a lesson as vital today as it was 3,000 years ago. Perhaps that's why this fragile clay artifact feels so profound. In our age of algorithms and predictive models, we still grapple with the same urge to find order in chaos, to make decisions with imperfect information. The Hittites just had the courage to admit they were reading the world's uncertainty in the quivering organs of sacrificial lambs, trusting that even the humblest materials could hold cosmic truths. The Tel Achona gold mask stares out from the depths of history with hollow eyes, its delicate features frozen in an expression of eerie serenity. Discovered in the ruins of ancient Alaca, a city torn between Hittite and Hurrian influence, this shimmering relic has sparked one of archaeology's most heated debates. Is this the face of a Hittite prince, his likeness preserved to guide him into the afterlife? Or does it portray a Hurrian king whose people ruled this borderland before the Hittites absorbed their kingdom? The mask's very craftsmanship fuels the mystery. Thin as a maple leaf yet impossibly durable, its gold was hammered using a technique foreign to Anatolia but eerily reminiscent of Mycenaean metalwork, right down to the subtle repoussé curls framing the forehead, nearly identical to those on the so-called Mask of Agamemnon from Grave Circle A. Context deepens the intrigue. The mask was found in a lavishly furnished tomb, its walls adorned with frescoes blending Hittite storm symbols and Hurrian lunar motifs. Among the grave goods sat a lapis lazuli seal inscribed in both Hittite and Hurrian, naming a certain Prince Talmi Sharuma. But here's the catch: Talmi Sharuma appears in Hittite archives as a vassal ruler, while Hurrian texts claim him as their own. The mask's discovery atop a skeleton only added fuel to the fire. Forensic analysis revealed the skull bore deliberate cranial deformation, a practice common among Hurrian nobility but virtually unknown in Hittite royal line. Yet the Mycenaean connection can't be ignored. Gold death masks were a hallmark of Mycenaean burials, but the Tel Achana specimen predates the earliest Greek examples by at least 50 years. This timeline flips traditional narratives of cultural diffusion. Instead of Greece influencing Anatolia, could the flow have been reversed? The mask's cheekbones are rendered with a subtle asymmetry absent in Mycenaean portraits, a technique seen in Hittite sculptures meant to capture lifelike individuality. Even the earlobes tell a story, pierced for ornaments in the Hurrian style, yet the lobes themselves are elongated, a feature Hittite artists reserved for deified rulers. Perhaps the boldest clue lies in what's missing. Unlike Mycenaean masks, which often gilded the deceased's actual facial features, this one shows no attempt at portraiture. The closed eyes and parted lips follow a ritual formula described in Hittite funerary texts, the sleep of divine transformation, and then there's the tomb's orientation. While Hurrian burials typically faced the setting sun, this chamber aligned with Mount Hazi's peak, sacred to the Hittite storm god. The mask's silent lips guard its secrets well, but its craftsmanship whispers of a borderland where identities blurred like molten gold. Whether Hittite or Hurrian, this golden face challenges our need for neat categories, reminding us that the ancient world was as fluid as the metals it wrought, a place where cultures didn't just collide but melded, leaving behind artifacts too singular to claim for just one people. In its shimmering surface, we don't just see a king or a prince. We see the reflection of an entire era's tangled soul. From forgotten conquerors to architects of an empire, the story of the Hittites has been rewritten before our eyes, one artifact at a time. These 25 relics didn't just fill museum cases. They shattered centuries of assumptions, revealing a civilization that stood shoulder to shoulder with Egypt, not in its shadow. The Lion Gate proved their architectural brilliance, the Bronze Treaty their diplomatic foresight, and the Sarissa plaque their military genius. We once pictured them as barbarian hordes sweeping through Anatolia, but their gold masks and musical notations whisper a different truth. This was a culture where war and poetry coexisted, where gods could be summoned with bronze axes and clay tablets held the rhythm of sacred songs. Yet for every mystery solved, a dozen more remain. Deep in the vaults of Ankara and Istanbul, shelves groan under the weight of untranslated tablets, thousands of lines of cuneiform waiting to be deciphered. Some may detail trade routes stretching to the Baltic for amber, others perhaps royal scandals or lost scientific treatises. There's even speculation about a tablet referencing a forgotten Hittite voyage across the Black Sea, a journey that could rewrite Bronze Age exploration. These artifacts didn't just change history books, they redefined what an empire could be. The Hittites didn't rule through brute force alone. They wove loyalty with golden diplomacy, innovation with tradition, and gods with everyday life. And if these relics have taught us anything, it's that their greatest secret might still lie buried, waiting for the next stroke of a scholar's trowel or the flicker of a translator's lamp. Who knows what the next discovery will unveil? Stick around, we'll be the first to tell you when the past decides to speak again.